hello, hola, shalom, and a guten tag. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Amanda Wright, who is a healer that actually takes everything into consideration. So, when you speak to someone who specializes in a heart condition but does not know anything about the lungs, you just better run. When you speak with someone that talks about your diet but knows nothing about your state of being, run. Anyone that claims to be able to help you in any way and is focused and specializes in only one aspect of our life, which is always a very small aspect, they'll not really be able to help you heal. They may be able to take away your symptoms for a while or help you lose weight, which is great. But if you want a real solution, it's Amanda. Because Amanda is one of very few people that has studied and understand how to implement this modality that we call Zen Shiatsu. So we're very lucky to have her. And I'm very grateful that you made the time to come, Amanda. And I really like to welcome you to Tiffy Talk. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's you know, I sort of balk a little bit at that title of healer because I believe that there's only one healer, in heaven, the universe, whatever you want to call that. And for whatever reason, I had a journey that I had to discover how to put myself back together. And as a result of that, by default, really, because I never set out in my life, I never thought it was my vocation to be a health practitioner. But it kind of happened to me. And then I realized that's what I had to do to be of service to the world, to people that were suffering, that I could help shorten their journey of suffering because of my own experience. So thank you for that introduction, but it's like a bit, wow,
Well,
overpowering.
let's call you a channel for healing because
Yeah,
basically you're a channel for that specific modality, and that is almost like a mission that you can't get away from, right?
absolutely. And there's more and more people in the world now that are coming to that understanding that you just spoke about, that we are a holistic entity. We've talked about mind, body, spirit, psychoneuroimmunology for many, many, many years. It's nothing new. So, so what I discovered is when you get to the root cause of the problem, then that's where the real healing, and that's on all levels. It's not just on the physical body. So we've got functional medicine, integrated medicine, a lot of different kind of more holistic practices now, and we're going much more into the conscious model of medicine, quantum medicine. So my modality is only rare, I should say, because aren't very many schools that teach it, because it's a hard discipline, not just to study, but you have to practice. You have to walk your talk, so to speak. And I mean, at school, I remember we started off with about 40 and we ended up with 3, because it's not easy. You have to be, I don't want to say disciplined, but you have to really choose life. I mean, I guess that's the bottom line, is choosing
So let's
life.
start with that. What happened to you that started you looking for healing from the source, which I think really that is the key. That's the secret. If you don't go to the source, you'll never get any heal. So what happened to you?
Together. So when I had my first car accident, it was in 1988, and I was quite badly injured. And so, the normal process then is, you get your X-rays and you get referred to a physiotherapist, and you go. I was going 3 times a week, and it was on the insurance, and I didn't know any different. So I went, and I was trying to run my business at the same time, and I was in pain, and I get a bit of relief each session, but by the next day it was back again. And I did that for nearly a year, and I really didn't change anything else because I had no idea. Nobody mentioned to do anything else, and I
So
was
wait,
busy and I was in pain.
before you go on about what you did, what kind of car accident did you have? Like what what happened to your body with that accident?
So the first accident, I had 2. So
1988. Yeah.
yeah, so the 1988 one, I was at a red traffic light. And a drunk driver crashed into the back of me, like smashed into the back of me. So we were rear-ended stationary, which anybody who understands the velocity, that was a very bad reverse whiplash. And I slammed into my steering wheel and so on and so forth. So I had a
Ouch.
very severe whiplash, which I didn't understand anything about whiplashes. back then, but now I know a lot about them, and they're very underestimated, the damage that they cause. And so I hurt my knees, my what do you call it, seat belt, you know, hurt me. And my whole spine was basically jarred. And so, but my main pain then was my back and my neck. And I'd had a back injury in my late teens. I had an osteophyte, which is a bony spur on my lower back. And when I went to see that, I went to a chiropractor, I think back then, to see about getting that treated, because that was what was recommended to me. And he said, make sure you never jar your spine, because you've got this bone sticking out and it irritates, you know, the muscle, and it will swell and you spasm, and that's why you spasm. So never have an accident. So here I am, you know, fast forward 10 years or whatever it was, and have a car accident. So that impacted this problem in my back. Soft tissue injury, serious whiplash, spinal, injury, breast tissue, ribs, knees. So just a lot of pain, really, swelling, bruising. But the main issue was my neck. You know, it was really hard to hold my head on, and the pain was very severe. So I went to the physiotherapist 3 times a week, and I didn't know anything else to do. And then a year later, the physio said, look, I can't do any more for you. So better you just get on with your life best way you can, and make sure you never jar your spine again, because it could end up being really not a good thing, right? So I went out and promptly had another car accident. More. So the first accident was meant to teach me something, and I didn't learn the lesson, so I needed to have another one. And the second one, I was going to meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning, going through a green light, and another car came from the opposite direction. And at the last minute, I realized he wasn't going to stop. He was turning in front of me and he wasn't stopping. And so once I realized he wasn't stopping, I sort of swerved to sort of try and avoid him. So I ended up smashing writing my car off, basically, and nearly killing myself. Meanwhile, my engine and everything was kind of crushed. And we don't know to this day how I got out of the car, because when they came later, they couldn't open the front door, my driver's door. So somehow, and I don't remember, because we go into shock, don't we? And you often don't remember. You get strength, you get, you know, some sort of adrenaline, whatever. So somehow I must have climbed into the back and got out the back. We don't know how. But as I was standing by my car, my clothes were literally disintegrating. And I remember standing there looking down and thinking, my clothes are disappearing. But my brain wasn't working. So I wasn't making the connection that the battery acid had come in and splashed all down me and was literally rotting, you know, disintegrating my clothes. So I'm standing there getting, you know, my clothes just disintegrating, and I was totally in shock. And something in my brain said, you know, because the engine was still running, and something in my brain said, you better get your briefcase out, because I was on my way to a meeting. So I somehow opened the car and got my briefcase out, which I don't remember, but I only know because I was there standing with my briefcase next to me. And somebody drove past and stopped and came and went and turned the engine off. And they said, the petrol was leaking and the car was about to blow up. Anyway, they took me to hospital and pumped me full of pethidine, and I don't really know what happened then for a few days. But then I was put in a wheelchair and I was wheeled over to the hydrotherapy. And then I started going back to the physio and doing all that. But they came to a point where they said to me, we can't do anything for you. You just have to learn to live with the pain. You'll never be pain-free. Those were their words. And between all the different specialists, as you call them, that I went to see, the best that they could come up with for me was a cocktail of drugs. So I tried one non-steroid anti-inflammatory, and it made my stomach feel so terrible. I was like, okay, I can't take those. So that wasn't a possibility for me, because it just made me feel bad. And I didn't want to take the other drugs. And so that's when I thought there's got to be a better way. And you know, all the different neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, pain management clinics, everywhere that I went, nobody could put me back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty, you know, nobody could put me back together again. I really don't know to this day what set me off on the journey of knowing there has to be something more. But I think something in me thought to myself, okay, you know, your nails grow and you cut them and they grow again, right? Your hair grows, you cut it, it grows again. You cut your skin, it heals. So something inside of me said, you know, the body has this ability to heal itself, to repair itself, to regrow, to renew. And so there must be a way of growing a new spine. And so I didn't consciously go out to look for someone who could teach me how to grow a new spine, because at that point I really didn't know there was such a thing. I just, at that point in time, I'd lost my business by then. I literally, I had no income. The insurance didn't pay. I had no capacity to advocate for myself with lawyers or anything like that. I just, you know, I had nothing. And so I just embarked on this journey to get out of pain, because the pain was so painful that I didn't really want to live. Well, it's not that I didn't want to live. I wanted to live, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. The pain was just too bad.
Did all this happen in England?
No, this all happened in Australia.
Australia.
But
I have to say something though, because there's a few people that I've talked to that have been through a car accident, and so have I. And there's a few things that people have in common. And the reason I asked you where is because it's happened all over the world, and it happened with the same steps. Like I had the accident, for example, excruciating pain, morphine, a cocktail of medicine. Of course, I was in the emergency room because I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then the doctors eventually come and say, well, you better get used to being on a wheelchair, being on a lot of pain. Here's a cocktail of medication, a physical therapist that really doesn't do anything, and get used to it. And again, I had to say the same thing you said. I don't think I want to live like that. So the medication rejection seems to be a step for people who have gone through that kind of trauma. And like you said, for a reason. So once you reject the medicine, it makes sense that you would have to look for a different way. You can't just reject the medicine and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything because you're in pain. And so you start looking for a different way rather than to live with it. And I think that's something that we may be living in a parallel universe, but I don't think it's just me and you. I think it's many people that have had to go through some kind of a journey of healing or a car accident or any kind of accident, that when they came to that realization that, no, I'm not taking all these cocktails and there's got to be a different way, then even though you have no idea what you're doing, you're being led on how to heal yourself. And you were led to something called Zen Shiatsu. Is that what it's called?
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
tell us what that is. What is Zen Shiatsu? I've never heard that word before. I mean, I've heard of Zen and I've heard of Shiatsu, but never together.
So it wasn't, I wasn't directly led there. It was a 7-year, very arduous, painful journey. And I wasn't led to Zen Shiatsu initially. Initially, what happened was gone to England, and I looked there also for help. So it wasn't only Australia, like you said. This is a worldwide phenomenon, or at least in the Western world. So in the UK, it wasn't any better. I didn't get any better help there either. I went to sports injury therapists there, physiotherapists there, and that, you know, they were cracking my neck and doing all sorts of terrible things, which nobody should ever have their neck cracked. So actually, that made it a lot worse. But anyway, I was I was back in Australia, and somebody in the community asked me if I'd join a yoga class in someone's home who had some backache. And she'd heard about this yoga teacher that could help, but she wouldn't come and do a class unless there was a minimum of 6 people, and they only had 5 people. And they asked me if I'd just come along, you know, just to do the good deed, you know. And I just laughed, because I mean, I could hardly walk. You know, literally, if I sat in a chair for more than 10 minutes, when I got up, I was bent in half. And it would take me quite a while to literally straighten myself up and hobble. And I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stay in any position for very long. The pain was so bad. So the idea of going to a yoga class was ludicrous. So I was like, but you know, like, sometimes you just have to do a good deed because you have to do a good deed, right? So I was like, okay, so I'll come, I'll pay the $50, whatever, if it's going to help someone else. And so I went, and it was the biggest gift. Sometimes when you just do for no reason and getting nothing in return, sometimes that's where the biggest gifts are, right? So anyway, so I went along, and the yoga teacher happened to be an Israeli, and happened to be like, and so I told her my story. She said, "Don't worry, just lie down on the floor with it, and breathe." And so first of all, she taught me to breathe. Like who thinks that they don't know how to breathe? I didn't know how to breathe. And to digress a little bit, my whole life since childhood, I'd had problems breathing. I used to suffer really bad bronchitis in the UK growing up, cold weather and the damp. And I had asthma, which was never diagnosed as asthma, so I wasn't on any medication for it. But friends used to not want me to do sleepovers because I'd be wheezing so much during the night. They couldn't go to sleep and they thought I was going to die in the night. So they stopped inviting sleepovers, and I never really knew why. So she started teaching me how to breathe, and the breathing is from the belly, so you fill your lower lung cavity, not just. So most adults, when I teach, because I teach now that yoga as well as part of my modality, and it's not Indian yoga, it's Japanese yoga, it's Meridian yoga. And so part of my modality is the corrective meridian based movements, if you like, postures. And it always starts with breathing. So when you tell people to breathe, I always get them to put one hand here and one hand on their belly and take a deep breath, and they always go like this,
And
right?
right here, it all stays right here.
Yeah,
that's how
so
people
everyone kind of goes like this. And we've learned to shallow breathe, flight or fight response, shallow breath, right? And if you look at a baby breathing, their belly goes up and down. It's a natural way to breathe, is our belly going up and down. But somehow as we grow up, and I'm not sure what point it changes, it's probably different in everyone, but at some point we forget how to do that belly breathing and we go into this shallow breathing. So she taught us how to belly breathe. And so literally, and it was 3 times a week we had this class. And so literally 3 times a week, I think it was 6 weeks, I went there and I lay on the floor. I could not lift my head off the floor. I mean, I'm not, when people see me now, they can't really get their head around that there was a point where I lay on the floor and could lift my head off the floor. Right. But I literally lay there and just breathed into my belly. And, there were a lot of side effects. I always like to say they're not side effects, they're effects of getting yourself better. So one of the effects of getting myself more in alignment, and I'll talk about the food later, was that because by that point I did have a puffer, and I had been diagnosed with asthma, and I had puffers. So my asthma went away from just learning to breathe, and the pain started to reduce. And over the period of that 6 weeks, 3 times a week, I started to be able to move a little bit. So much so I could feel the benefits that when we stopped that class, I said to the teacher, can I come to her city classes, the classes that she was doing in town? And she said, yes, absolutely. Then this yoga teacher, she said to me, look, I do this thing called Zen Shiatsu. And if you like, I can give you a treatment, and I can give you some recommendations. So I said, okay, I'd love that. So she did this Zen Shiatsu treatment on me, which I'd never heard of. And it was acupressure, and she worked along certain meridians. And then at the end of it, she said to me, you need to eat this and eat this and not eat this and not eat this. And somehow I think if we really tune into our gut, we should be able to recognize someone who does know what they're talking about. Fast forward, and I'm actually in Israel, and I see a course advertised, a weekend thing, and it was all about macrobiotics and this and that and the other. I didn't know what it was talking about, but something in it spoke to me, and I thought maybe that could help me. So I went along, and they were serving all this weird food and seaweed and brown rice, this stuff, and there was one man there who was speaking. I mean, there were a few speakers. There was one man there, and he told his story about how he'd been, almost wheelchair bound with his arthritis at a young age in his 40s, and it was getting worse and worse. And he had young kids, heading into teens, and he didn't want to be wheelchair bound. And he heard about the Cushy Institute, and he flew over to the Cushy Institute in America. And he was so blown away by what they knew about him, what they told him about himself and the medicine food they taught him, and he came back, he implemented it. And when he was standing in front of us, you've never seen a fitter, stronger, healthier specimen of a man, right? And so he started talking to us about yin and yang, and he's sitting there and he's pointing to people in the audience, and he pointed to me and he went, like, for example, you are very yin. So after it was over, I went up to him and I said, thank you very much. And what does yin mean? And he looked at me and he said to me, you eat a lot of fruit, don't you? And I said, yes, it's healthy, it's delicious, it's easy to, when you're traveling, it's always available. I thought it was good for me. He said, no, you can't eat fruit. And so then he looked at me and he said, and you're constipated. And I said, no, I'm not. Because, I had this idea that constipation is when you sit on the loo and you strain. Actually, how we defecate is one of the most fundamental things to our health. And we should all really pay a lot of attention to what's coming out the other end.
So you're saying that eating fruit makes you constipated?
So in my case, ideally, you should empty everything out before you put anything else in. So if you're eating 3 times a day, you should actually empty 3 times a day. No, I don't think I've met anyone other than people who've got IBS or some irritable bowel condition.
Babies.
Yeah. So he told me what to do. So I could only implement very few recipes that he gave me, and so I ate very simply from a very small menu, if you like. And I just rotated this very small handful of recipes that he gave me. So he gave me one dish that I don't recommend for people now when they're starting on a healing journey, even though it helped me get through my situation. But it was like a spelt lasagna kind of thing, or like a tagliatelle kind of those flat noodles. And it was done with oats and apples and some nuts and cinnamon. And you kind of mix it all together and make like a loaf, and I'd bake it in the toaster oven, and it came out sort of hard, so I could slice it. So I'd actually cut a slice and eat it. So it sort of satisfied my carb craving that I didn't know my brain was addicted. I also used to pop a lot of popcorn, no salt, no oil or anything, but I had an oral fixation. I needed to be munching,
Eat something, yeah.
So I popped a lot of popcorn, which I also don't recommend anymore. I cooked brown rice. I introduced beans like lentils, which I'd never really eaten much of before. And I introduced seaweed into my diet, and vegetables, more vegetables and greens. So I made very simple things. So like I just throw everything in one pot, and just cook it all up, and like I'd eat these like stews, if you like. So it's very simple and very basic. But I have to tell you, within 6 weeks, my pain had gone down so radically. If you've been in chronic pain for years, it was 7 years at that point. And here I am skipping around with them, actually able to sort of like,
wow.
I wasn't cured by a long shot, and there was still pain there. But the shift was enough that I could actually, some joy had come back into my life.
So what's the difference between brown rice and white rice?
So in nature, we were gifted with everything that we need for our health. Okay, so we need macro, micronutrients, and when a grain comes in its complete form, it has everything within it. The synergy within nature of what we need, that everything works together, is already built in. So when you have brown rice, it still has intact underneath its husk, or whatever you want to call it, its fats, all its vitamins, all its minerals. Okay, so when you eat the whole grain, you get everything that you need. When you start to refine anything, you lose a lot of those essential nutrients. If you eat, and chew, your body has a chance to send messages to the brain to say, I'm satiated. And then you will stop eating, and if in the beginning they have a need to eat and they want to eat 2 bowlfuls, I let them, because it won't put on weight, so that's what I did initially. And I did these few recipes, and I started to get out of pain. And then within a very short time, I think it was within 6 months, I dropped 20 kilos, about 40 pounds. And I wasn't dieting. That was the beauty of it. All those other problems went. I was able to throw my puffer away. No more asthma, no more sinus, no more allergies, no more nothing. And none of it was, I wasn't attempting to work with any of those things, because all of those things I thought I had to live with, because I'd been
Which
told
you
with
had
nothing.
lived with for a long time. And I think you
Yeah.
kind of, it was a way of life. So if you had to define Zen's Shiatsu, what would be the shortest definition you can give it?
Zen Shiatsu is a diagnostic shiatsu. So we work in there's certain the abdomen is called the hara, and we do something called hara diagnosis. And there's certain points, energy points in the hara that we learn as diagnosticians to figure out where the imbalances in the body are. And so we work out where there's deficiencies in your blood. Well, it's your blood flow, but it's actually essentially your energy, which affects everything, and where there's stagnation and blockages in digestion. And by being able to diagnose, we can be much, much more specific when we do a treatment. So we can balance specifically what's your issue, which will be different to somebody else's issue. So even if you both have, like, let's say 2 people with cancer, God forbid, or 2 people with diabetes, God their meridian diagnosis will be completely different, won't be the same. And so we can treat people specifically. And once we understand the diagnosis, we know the source. And we learn how to test the different meridian combinations so we get the right one. And the right one is not the superficial layer. We have to go back, because healing's like layers, like an onion, there's layers. So we go back and we find the conversation that the body's trying to have, but the connection is stuck, is faulty, if you like. And by facilitating, we aren't energy. We're working with people's energy, but it's not our energy. We basically facilitate the frequency in your energy flow to come back to what it needs to be vibrating at, so that the body can then remember how to heal itself. And in part of the diagnosis, we're able to look at the functional, which is what foods you're eating that your body doesn't want, and what foods your body does want. But that's on an elemental level. It's not like a nutritionist or a dietitian where we compartmentalize the food into its component parts. It's about energies of food. It's a very different way of looking at food. So we're not nutritionists or dietitians. We also work on the psyche spiritual body, because we all have a psyche spiritual body. We're all part of the electromagnetic field of the universe. So we work into that field. We work on the emotional body, because obviously we have memories, traumas trapped in our cellular memories. So we work on that level as well. And then we work on the physical body, the structure of the body, which obviously has to be in alignment as well for everything to flow. So it's a very complete holistic modality, but it's based in the hara diagnosis. And that's what sets Zen Shiatsu apart from any other modality.
So that sounds to me like a 300 degrees diametrically opposing to regular medicine that people go to, which, by the way, it's not traditional medicine, because it's actually pretty new. It's only been around for 70 or 80 years. And before that, they had a lot more in-depth kind of healing modalities. But that's totally directly opposing. If you first want to find out exactly what is wrong on all those levels, that's the last thing the doctor would want to do. The only thing the doctor wants to know is what kind of symptom you have, what kind of drug will kill that symptom. Never mind what else it's going to kill, but it's going to kill that symptom. And so you can't get more opposed to what the doctor would do. You just cannot.
So I can only work with people who are really ready to change and who really want to embrace life and get their life back. And some people have never experienced vitality or life. I think one of the basic fundamentals that's missing today is people knowing how to live. If you don't know how to live, then when you lose the capacity to live the way you've been living, all you really want to do is get back to that level. So, if you've never lived a fully vibrant, vital life of adventure, and, you're not going to want to get back to that because you never had that. And so I tend to work with people who've had that and then they lose that and they want that back again. And a lot of people come to me who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they've tried everything else, nothing's worked. And they're at a point where now, if they don't make some changes, they don't want to continue living the the way they're living, and or people have run out of medications. I often get people the doctors can't give them. They've maxed out on their BP meds or their this meds or their oncologist got nothing left to offer them or whatever. I don't really want. I mean, I work with those people and we have amazing turnarounds, but I can't claim to cure anyone. But I can definitely help people's bodies remember how to heal them. But I want to work with people and prevent them getting sick in the first place. We don't get sick overnight. No sickness, degenerative disease or, non-communicable diseases happen overnight. They take 10, 20, 30 years to develop before you're symptomatic or before they manifest. So rather than wait till they manifest, if we took simple steps, we don't need to take radical steps at that point because we're not sick per se yet that we know of anyway. And so we don't have to do the radical changes that I did. And that's where that's what I'm passionate about, is trying to help people know that just make a little tweak here and a little change there, and you can hopefully prevent, getting dementia, getting Alzheimer's, getting cancer, getting diabetes, getting heart disease. They're all preventable diseases. They're all lifestyle diseases. And as you say, a lot of medications that we've had in our past will impact what happens to us in the future. So we may get short-term relief from the symptoms, but actually they're pushing the symptoms deeper into the body, so then they'll come up in a different way later on. And so, look, I think, like you say, modern medicine, or whatever you want to call it, new medicine that's evolving all the time, is slowly catching up with ancient medicine.
So it's been really a pleasure talking to you. We will continue. Hopefully we can do it next week, but we'll talk about that. I want to really tell you I appreciate it. And I think just by listening people and maybe just changing their perspective a little bit from what it was, that in itself can already start to awaken something inside of us and say, okay, maybe my blood pressure medication does not have to be here for the rest of my life. Even that in itself would be a huge move. So I appreciate you even talking about it a little bit. And then if they really need more and they want to hear more, they could always come to you directly. I'm going to put a link to anything that you want to give me where people can contact you directly. I can do it right here at the description of this. Any last words that you want to say before we tell everybody good night, good afternoon, or good morning?
I just want to say to people that, life is wonderful, life is beautiful, and nature is incredible. The wisdom in nature is just, it's just phenomenal. And this being, this body, this creation that we were blessed to be born into is really, it's genius. It's genius, it's in its simplicity, and it's also genius in its complexity, because I love feeling how I feel now, and I know how I didn't love feeling how I felt many times over my life, my different aches and pains and illnesses and problems. And it's when you just are able to fully be every day and do whatever you need to do without thinking about, well, I can't do this because my knee, I can't do this because my headache, I can't do this because, or I can't go there because of my allergies. And it's not a fun way to live. And I think we need to bring fun and joy back to our lives. And the more we as individuals are happy, and when I say happy, I mean in a good mood, and we can be in a good mood when our brain and gut are in balance. And the more we have good energy and good vibration, the more we can go into the world with compassion and empathy and kindness. And the more we can go out there with a smile on our faces, the more people will respond to that with smiles on their faces. And that's what will change the world. And that's my endeavor.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add to that, the simplicity of the way things are is not just in food, it's really in everything. People sit around right now and say, oh my God, the world is falling apart. What do I have to do? I'm going to go out and fight and scream and go to court. But that's not really what we're asked to do. It comes down to the simplicity of the more joy you have in your life, the less the darkness has light to suck out of you. So the more simple you are in the sense of being calm, happy, joyful, and have all these positive attributes, you're literally saving the world. You might feel great, but you are saving the entire world just by not allowing anger, hate, frustration into your life. And that's really how simple it all comes down to. So thank you so much. I think that's a great place to stop.
Thank you very much.
And before I go here, let me just show you, this is my book on Amazon. It's called Wake Up and Plan for Roses. It is about planning your life consciously, because we actually plan our life unconsciously if we don't have an active plan. So might as well make it active, might as well make it the way you like it. So if you want the book, it's Wake Up and Plan for Roses on Amazon.